I am Lucy Smith. On a winter morning with snow quietly falling, I stood by the window, gazing at the cityscape of Duluth. This small town in northeastern Minnesota, facing Lake Superior, is enveloped in a world of silver during winter. Today was no exception. "Lucy, coffee's ready," my husband Tom's voice came from the kitchen. "Thank you, dear," I replied, smiling at the kindness of my 65-year-old husband. Our morning routine, as we approached our 40th wedding anniversary, was as precise as a clock. Even in retirement, Tom still wakes up at 6 a.m. to brew coffee. I get up at 7, check the town's condition from the window, and then start preparing breakfast. As we sat at the table, Tom said while opening the newspaper, "Sarah's on another business trip, it seems." "I see." I sighed softly. Our daughter Sarah is 35. As an executive at a major IT company, she travels around the world. While I'm proud of her work, I worry about her limited time with family. "I wonder if Mark is okay," Tom muttered. I tilted my head. "Why?" "Well, being a house husband must be tough. Especially with Jimmy to take care of." Sarah's husband Mark works as a music producer while mainly taking care of household chores and their 8-year-old son Jimmy. "Mark will be fine," I answered. "He told me he handmade Jimmy's costume for the school play the other day." Tom nodded, impressed. He's quite handy." After breakfast, I checked my schedule for the day. I have volunteer work at the community center in the afternoon. Duluth is a small town, but the bonds between residents are strong. Especially in winter, which is long and harsh, it's important to help each other. "Tom, what would you like for dinner today?" I asked. "I'd love your special hot dish," my husband replied. Hot dish, Minnesota's signature dish. Perfect for cold days. While checking the ingredients, I decided to stop by Cub Foods supermarket. On my way back from the community center in the afternoon, my cell phone rang. Sarah's name was on the screen. "Mom, I'm sorry. This weekend's visit has been canceled." Sarah's voice was filled with regret. "It can't be helped." "Work is important," I said, feeling a small disappointment in my heart. After hanging up, snow had started falling again. The wind blowing from Lake Superior stings my cheeks. As soon as I got home, I lit the fireplace. While preparing dinner, I was thinking about Sarah's family. My busy daughter, house husband son-in-law, and adorable grandson. Even though we live apart, I believe our family bond is strong. Tom came out of his study and said, "Smells delicious." "It'll be ready soon," I replied, looking out the window. The snow was intensifying. Little did I know then that these peaceful days would soon be greatly shaken. Just after midnight, I woke up to the sound of loud knocking. "Lucy, did something happen?" Tom sat up beside me. Looking at the clock, it was past 1 a.m. Another knock, weaker this time. Who could it be? Putting on a robe over my nightgown, I went downstairs. It was a blizzard outside. Who on earth at this hour? The moment I opened the door, I gasped. Jimmy. There stood my grandson Jimmy. Snow had piled up on his small 8-year-old body, and his face was red from the cold. And on his back, A baby? Grandma. Jimmy's voice was trembling. Please help this baby. Its life is in danger. Oh my, how terrible. Come in right away. As I pulled Jimmy into the house, I was worried about the baby's condition. Its eyes were barely open and unfocused, and its breathing was shallow. Tom! Come down quickly. Tom, who came running down the stairs, seemed to understand the situation at a glance. Lucy, bring some blankets. Jimmy, are you all right? Jimmy answered with trembling lips, I'm okay, but this baby. I hurried to bring blankets and gently wrapped the baby. Its body was cold. Jimmy, who is this baby? Why are you? Questions kept coming up, but the baby's life was the priority now. Tom, we need to go to the hospital. My husband was already reaching for the phone. I'll call an ambulance. No, it'll take too long in this blizzard. Let's go by car. Tom hesitated for a moment but then nodded. All right. I'll get the car ready. While warming Jimmy's frozen body, I said, Jimmy, you did well. It's going to be okay now. He nodded with tears in his eyes. A few minutes later, we were in Tom's SUV. In the back seat, I held the baby while Jimmy cuddled up to me. We're heading to Essentia Health St. Mary's Medical Center. Tom's voice was tense. Outside the window was a snowstorm. Visibility was poor, and the roads were slippery. But Tom's driving was careful yet swift. Lucy, how's the baby? Its breathing is weak. We need to hurry. Jimmy said in a small voice, Grandma. I'm scared. It's okay, Jimmy. You were very brave. You saved this baby's life. When we arrived at the hospital, the medical staff responded quickly. It's a girl, about 3 months old. Her body temperature is extremely low. I could hear the nurse's voice. The baby was immediately taken to the treatment room. In the waiting room, I hugged Jimmy. Now, tell me. What happened? Jimmy answered with a face about to cry, Dad. Dad said, go to Grandma's house. Mark did. But why? At that point, the doctor appeared, interrupting our conversation. The baby's condition has stabilized. However, the doctor's expression clouded. Is there a problem? Tom asked. Yes. From the baby's symptoms, there's a possibility of a rare genetic disorder. We need more detailed tests, but if we had the parents' medical information. I was confused. But we don't know about this child's parents. The doctor, looking at the baby's chart, said, I see. By the way, do you recognize the distinctive mole behind the baby's left ear? Huh? I took a closer look at the baby's face. Indeed, there was a small mole behind the left ear. And its position. No way. Memories raced through my mind like a flashback. Mark also had a similar mole behind his ear. And the baby's eye color, facial features, everything resembled Mark. Mrs. Smith, do you have any idea? The doctor's voice sounded distant. My mind was in confusion. Could this baby be Mark's? Lucy. Tom's voice brought me back to reality. Well. As I stumbled for words, the doctor quietly said, "The treatment for this condition is a race against time. It could be information crucial to the baby's life." Taking a deep breath, I made a decision. "Yes, I understand. I'll tell you about this child's father." Tom looked at me with a surprised face. Jimmy seemed unable to understand the situation, with an anxious expression. Outside the window, snow was still falling. I had a feeling that by the time this long night ended, our lives would be greatly changed. The waiting room at the hospital. The clock hands pointed to 3 a.m. My mind was still in a whirlwind of confusion. "Mrs. Smith," the doctor's voice quietly echoed. "Can you tell me a bit more about the baby's condition?" Taking a deep breath, I looked into the doctor's eyes. "Yes, please go ahead. From the baby's symptoms, there's a high possibility of a rare genetic disorder. Specifically, we suspect an abnormality in the enzymes involved in metabolism." Tom opened his mouth. "Is it serious?" The doctor answered, carefully choosing his words. "Early detection and appropriate treatment are key. However, for accurate diagnosis and treatment, the parent's medical information is crucial." I hesitated. Though not certain, the similarities between this baby and Mark couldn't be ignored. "Doctor," I said with a slightly trembling voice. "About this child's father, it's my guess, but—" The doctor nodded quietly. "Any information would be helpful. It's about my daughter's husband, Mark. He also has a similar mole behind his left ear." As I struggled for words, Tom turned to me with a surprised face. "Lucy, you don't mean..." "Also," I continued, "the eye color and facial features resemble Mark's." The doctor listened with a serious expression. "That's important information. Do you have Mark's contact information?" "I'd like to confirm his medical information directly." I nodded and took out my smartphone. I called Mark on WhatsApp. The ringtone sounds. Once, twice. "Hello, Lucy. Is something wrong at this hour?" Mark's voice was mixed with tension. "Mark, we're at the hospital. About a baby." A moment of silence. "Huh? What do you mean?" "Jimmy brought a baby here. And, isn't this child yours?" I could hear Mark gasping on the other end of the phone. His voice was trembling. "I'll be right there." The call ended. After explaining the situation to the doctor, he nodded. "I understand. We'll start possible tests and emergency treatment until Mark arrives." Jimmy asked in a small voice, "Grandma, will the baby be okay?" I hugged my grandson. "The doctors are doing their best. All we can do now is pray." Tom placed his hand on my shoulder. "Lucy, are you all right?" I looked into my husband's eyes. The gaze of my husband of over 40 years slightly calmed my heart. "Yes. I just don't know what's going to happen from here." Tom nodded gently. "We'll get through this together." Time passed. As the doctors bustled about, we waited quietly. And about an hour later, the hospital's automatic doors opened, and Mark rushed in, out of breath. "Lucy." "Tom." His eyes were red, and his hair was disheveled. The baby. At that moment, his eyes fell on Jimmy. "Jimmy, why are you?" Jimmy looked at Mark, seemingly frightened. The doctor approached Mark. "Are you Mark? Please come to the examination room immediately." Mark looked at us. His eyes were filled with fear and regret. "Lucy, Tom. I'm truly sorry. I'll explain everything. But for now." I nodded quietly. "I understand. The baby comes first." Mark was led away by the doctor. Watching his back as he left, I let out a deep sigh. Just a little longer until the truth is revealed. But thinking about the impact this truth would have on our family, my chest tightened. Tom held my hand. "No matter what happens, we're family." I leaned against my husband. Outside the window, snow continued to fall quietly. As the morning sun began to shine through the hospital windows, Mark returned from the examination room. His expression was exhausted, but there was also a hint of relief. "How's the baby's condition?" I asked, and Mark nodded slightly. "The doctor said it was good that we discovered it early. Long-term treatment will be necessary, but..." He stumbled over his words. Tom quietly said, "Mark, tell us everything." Mark exhaled deeply and sat down in a chair. "Yes. I'll tell you everything." He closed his eyes and slowly began to speak. "Last summer, I was in New York producing a new album. That's where I met Taylor." "Taylor?" I repeated with a confused face. Mark gave a weak smile. "Yes, Taylor Swift." Tom and I gasped. "The world-famous singer, Taylor Swift." At first, it was purely a professional relationship. But as we worked on songs together, Mark continued, choosing his words carefully, "we became attracted to each other." Tom said in a stern tone, "You mean, you had an affair?" Mark lowered his face. "Yes. I'm truly sorry. I couldn't hide my agitation. But, the baby..." "Well..." Mark continued painfully. "A few months after our relationship started, we found out Taylor was pregnant." A heavy silence fell in the room. Mark took a deep breath and continued. "Taylor found out she was pregnant in February 2023. It was just when she was preparing for her tour, and she fell into a great panic." "But how did you keep it hidden?" I asked, puzzled. Mark gave a bitter smile. "Taylor's management team devised a thorough secrecy strategy. First, they cancelled the latter half of the scheduled tour for health reasons." Tom interjected, "Come to think of it, I feel like we stopped seeing Taylor around last summer." "That's right," Mark nodded. "From July to December, Taylor completely disappeared from the public eye. She secluded herself in her private villa, and when she went out, she was perfectly disguised." "The birth?" I asked with a trembling voice. "October 15th, Mark's eyes welled up with tears. A top-secret medical team was invited to the villa, and she gave birth there. Right after the baby was born, Taylor made a decision." Sarah quietly asked, "To entrust the baby to you?" Mark lowered his face. "Yes. Considering Taylor's career and the baby's future, it was decided that I would take custody. But how did you think you could keep such a big secret? Tom's voice was tinged with anger. Mark slumped his shoulders. Honestly, I wasn't confident. But Taylor's team conducted thorough information management and made all involved parties sign strict confidentiality agreements. And he choked on his words. I kept lying to my family. A heavy silence fell in the room. Taylor Swift, a global star's secret pregnancy and childbirth. And Mark, who ended up taking custody of the child. In a situation that seemed unreal, we were at a loss for words. Taylor was in a great dilemma. Considering her career, the impact on her fans, it was difficult to make this fact public. So? Tom's voice was tinged with anger. Taylor gave birth in secret and then entrusted the baby to me. No way. I was at a loss for words. Mark continued. To protect Taylor's career, and I thought it was my responsibility too. But what about Sarah? Jimmy? My voice was trembling. Tears welled up in Mark's eyes. I couldn't tell Sarah. I was afraid of losing everything. Tom stood up. So you used Jimmy. At that moment, Jimmy said in a small voice, Dad. I can't keep it a secret anymore. We turned our attention to Jimmy. He began to speak with a trembling voice. Last night, the baby wouldn't stop crying. Dad said, go to Grandma's house, so. Mark covered his face. Jimmy, I'm sorry. It was Dad's fault. I hugged Jimmy. Thank you for telling us. You're very brave. Mark said with a face about to cry, I'm truly sorry. I've ruined everything. Tom, still with a stern expression, said, have you told Sarah? Mark shook his head. Not yet. But I know I can't keep it hidden any longer. I let out a deep sigh. Mark, you've made a big mistake. But now, we have to think about this baby first. Mark nodded. Yes. I'll do everything I can. At that moment, a nurse entered the room. Would you like to see the baby? We stood up and headed towards the baby. This small life had greatly changed our lives. We still don't know what will happen from here. But protecting this child, I strongly felt that was the only thing we could do now. As the night at the hospital ended, we returned home, looking exhausted. The baby was still hospitalized, but her condition was stable. Mark stayed at the hospital, and we brought Jimmy home. As soon as we arrived home, the front door opened. There stood Sarah. Mom. Dad. Jimmy. Sarah's voice was mixed with worry and anxiety. What on earth happened? I hugged Sarah. Welcome back. We have a lot to talk about. We gathered in the living room. Tom quietly began to explain the situation. Sarah's expression gradually changed. Surprise, confusion, and then anger. Wait. Sarah's voice was trembling. Mark, with Taylor Swift, and even a baby. I held my daughter's hand. Yes, Sarah. We couldn't believe it either. Sarah suddenly stood up. I can't believe this. How could Mark do such a thing? Tears welled up in her eyes. Jimmy said in a small voice, "Mom, don't be angry." Sarah looked at Jimmy as if coming to her senses. "Oh, Jimmy. I'm sorry. Mom's not angry. I'm just shocked." Tom spoke up, "Sarah, indeed Mark has made a big mistake. But we need to stay calm now." "Stay calm." Sarah's voice rose. "How can I stay calm? My husband had an affair with a world-famous star and even has a secret child." I put my hand on Sarah's shoulder. "I understand, Sarah. But now we have to think about the baby." Sarah let out a deep sigh. "The baby, you mean my stepdaughter?" We fell silent. The weight of those words spread throughout the room. Jimmy asked anxiously, "Does this mean I have a little sister?" Sarah hugged Jimmy. "Jimmy. I'm sorry. We've involved you in such a complicated situation." Tom said quietly, "We need to think about what comes next. Our relationship with Mark, the baby's future." Sarah looked up. Her face, wet with tears, now showed a determined expression. "I'll talk to Mark. But I don't know if I can forgive him. My heart ached at my daughter's strength. We'll respect whatever decision you make. And no matter what decision you make, we're on your side." Tom nodded too. "That's right. We're family." At that moment, Sarah's smartphone rang. She frowned as she looked at the screen. "It's from Mark." Sarah took a deep breath and answered the phone. We watched quietly. Can we overcome this crisis? Our family bonds are being tested. But I believe, with love and understanding, we can overcome any difficulty. The next morning, as I was preparing breakfast, Tom rushed into the kitchen with a newspaper in hand. "Lucy, look at this." As I read the article he was pointing to, the blood drained from my face. Rumor: Taylor Swift's secret childbirth. While the article didn't reveal details, it pointed out that Taylor had disappeared from public view from September to December last year, suggesting the possibility that she had given birth during that time. No way. I was at a loss for words. Tom nodded. It seems to be causing a big stir on social media too. I immediately headed to Sarah's room. She was already awake, staring at her smartphone. "Mom, it's becoming a big deal." On Sarah's screen, the hashtag Taylor Secret Baby was dancing. "What about Mark?" I asked, and Sarah shook her head. "Still at the hospital. But his social media accounts are already flooded with comments." At that moment, Sarah's smartphone rang. She answered the phone with a frown. "Yes, this is Sarah." "Huh? Mark's manager." I watched Sarah's expression cloud over. "I understand. Yes, I'll consider it." After hanging up, Sarah let out a deep sigh. Apparently Mark's career is in danger. Several projects have been cancelled. I sat down next to Sarah. "What are you going to do?" She answered hesitantly, "Honestly, I don't know. But we have to protect our family's privacy." From that day on, our lives changed completely. Paparazzi camped out in front of our house, and the phone kept ringing. Sarah had to take time off work, and it became difficult for Jimmy to go to school. Mark was rushing back and forth between the hospital and home, trying to contain the situation. Negotiations with Taylor's side, media responses, and above all, reconciliation with the family. All Tom and I could do was to protect our family until this storm passed. Around the time the media frenzy had settled down a bit, we decided to start family counseling. The Hills Youth and Family Services was a reputable facility with extensive experience in dealing with such complex family issues. The first session was filled with tension. Sarah and Mark sat next to each other, but there was a distance between them. Jimmy was anxiously sitting next to me. Dr. Johnson, the counselor, gently began to speak. "Thank you all for coming here. Let's rebuild your family bonds one step at a time." With each session, we saw small but gradual changes. Sarah became able to listen quietly to Mark's words, and Mark deeply reflected on his mistakes and continued to make efforts for the family. I rushed around supporting Sarah and Mark while helping to take care of the baby, who was named Melody. Tom also silently supported the family, especially focusing on Jimmy's emotional care. What surprised us was the community's reaction. At first, we were looked at with curious eyes, but soon a circle of warm support spread. When the pastor of the local First Lutheran Church came to visit us, I was honestly surprised. "Mrs. Smith, I know this is a difficult time. But God is always with you. Everyone at the church is praying for you." The neighbors also began to offer kind words little by little. Some even brought homemade meals. One day, Sarah showed a small smile. "Mom, experiencing everyone's kindness, it's given me a little hope." I hugged my daughter. "That's right, Sarah. Let's get through this together." The path to rebuilding was long and steep. But with family bonds and the support of those around us, we believed we could overcome it. Believing this, we moved forward one step at a time. With the arrival of autumn, the streets of Duluth were enveloped in colorful foliage. 6 months had passed since that snowy night, and our lives were changing slowly but surely. A soft blanket was spread on the living room floor, and Melody was happily rolling around on it. Her laughter echoed throughout the house. "Look, Melody. Come here." When Sarah gently called out, Melody flapped her tiny hands and feet and crawled over. "That's amazing, she can already crawl," I said with emotion. Sarah smiled. "Yes, she's growing so fast." At that moment, the door opened, and Mark and Jimmy came home. "We're back." Mark's voice no longer had the tension it once did. Jimmy rushed over to Melody. "Melody, look. I made this picture at school today." Melody clapped her hands happily upon hearing her brother's voice. I quietly watched this scene. The shape of our family had changed, but new bonds were being formed. Sarah and Mark's relationship was also slowly being repaired. The weekly family counseling sessions became an opportunity to understand and forgive each other. "Lucy," I turned at Tom's voice to see him holding a newspaper. "It's an article about Taylor Swift." I held my breath. The relationship with Taylor Swift was still a delicate issue for us. Reading the article, it said that Taylor had begun to focus on charitable activities, particularly supporting teenage mothers. It might be her own form of atonement, I murmured. Mark approached and quietly said, "Last week, I received a call from Taylor." We listened intently, holding our breath. She wants to know about Melody, but she says she has no intention of disrupting our lives. Sarah thought for a moment before saying, "Someday, when Melody is older, we'll have to tell her about her." Mark nodded. "Yes, when that time comes, let's be honest." I exchanged glances with Tom. From the crisis we faced that night, our family had grown into a stronger, more caring entity. "Come on, let's prepare dinner," I said. "Tonight, we'll all eat together as a family." As I headed to the kitchen, I looked back. In the living room, Sarah and Mark were cuddling Melody while Jimmy talked to her cheerfully. Tom was reading the newspaper with a satisfied expression. This is our new normal. An unexpected event had brought an unforeseen blessing. On December 24th, as snow quietly piled up, our house was wrapped in warm light. Under the large Christmas tree, colorful presents were piled up. By the fireplace, Tom was telling Jimmy and Melody stories about Santa Claus. From the kitchen, I could hear Sarah and Mark's cheerful voices. Seeing them cooperating to prepare the Christmas dinner, I felt a deep sense of relief. "Lucy, need any help?" I turned at Taylor's voice to see her smiling gently. Yes, this year's Christmas was special. We had welcomed Taylor into our home. "Thank you, dear. Could you help with setting the table?" Taylor nodded and headed to the living room. As she approached Melody, the little girl raised both hands, asking to be picked up. Watching this scene, I felt my eyes well up with tears. Our story that began on that snowy night a year ago. Suffering, anger, and then forgiveness. The happiness we have now after going through it all. Family bonds sometimes face trials. But with love and understanding, any difficulty can be overcome. And sometimes, the most unexpected events bring the greatest blessings. All right, everyone. Dinner's ready. At my call, the whole family gathered. At this moment, I thought I would engrave this happiness in my heart forever.